All right, so today we're going to be talking all about Google Maps. So we're going to be doing real in-depth workshop of everything related to Google Maps, getting your business ranked on there, and really just how you can show up in the Google Maps section. And I'm going to give you all kinds of information of how to do that, and then also the importance of it, give you some statistics behind it, things like that. Okay, so what we're going to be talking about here today, I'm going to show you some different updates with the Google Maps. We're going to be talking about uh, biggest issues that could be preventing you from ranking on the Google Maps. We're going to talk about our proven model and what's been working well for us, and then also go through the different tools that you can use to automate and really get those better rankings consistently. These are the basically the principles of our omnipresence marketing system. So what that means is, you know, basically in order to really grow a business, and if you see the businesses that are really growing, really thriving, they likely have some kind of omnipresence. So basically you need to be seen everywhere in the marketplace. You need to be showing up not just in one area, but in multiple. But today we're going to be talking about the Google Map Pack. But you need to get those opportunities. So if you want to grow your business, you need to be getting opportunities. You need to be getting leads, whether it's from the Google Maps, whether it's from SEO, from AI, ads, whatever it is, you need to make sure you're getting those opportunities and you're getting enough to fill your calendar and have, hit the goals that you're looking for. So number one is maximize opportunities. Number two is going to be maximize brand impressions. So this is huge for that whole omnipresence. If you want to be well known and you want to be top of mind when somebody's ready to work in your market, you want to make sure you are getting a lot of exposure there, a lot of brand impressions. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. But there is a rule of, you may have heard this, like a rule of 7 with marketing. Somebody needs to see your business 7 times before they work with it. But now with all the ads and constantly being bombarded with them on Facebook, Instagram, and everywhere else, they say it's more like 21 times if a business is selling B2C and a ticket price of 10,000 or more. So if you're a fence or deck contractor, I know you're going to be having a lot of different projects that are around that size. So you need to make sure you're getting those brand impressions. Number 3 is going to be maximizing conversions. So, once you have these opportunities, these leads are coming in, and people are seeing your brand, understanding it, they're going to eventually go to your website or any of your online assets. And from there, you need to make sure things are set up to convert them. So you need to make sure the website's set up properly to really sell that lead. And everything you have online is built to actually convert and turn them into leads, not just to sit there and look at your whatever you have. Okay, so it's true. They are as important as ever. Basically with the Google Maps, I'm going to show you kind of how things have progressed even with AI, because even us, with when AI came out, we were wondering how is it going to affect things. Is Google Maps going to matter as much? And what we've seen and what we keep a close eye on is how many people are going to Google Maps still, and that's what I'm going to show you some kind of stats behind that. Okay, so as it stands, 44% of clicks and calls go to the Google Maps or this map pack section. So what this is here, you can see this is when somebody types in, fencing company, Maryland, or deck company or deck builder near me. The map pack typically shows for those location searches, which also tend to be some of the better leads that you can have. So it's really, really critical to rank in that area because so many people go there. People trust that section a lot. And, the big reason is because it's got the reviews attached to it. I think everybody here can kind of agree that, if you're looking for a contractor, somebody for your house or whatever, you're going to be looking at those reviews when you type in whatever the service is, and those have a lot of weight. So this is where most of the people go. This is what our number one focus is when we work with clients. We always recommend getting this in order because it is going to be the best leads generally, and also a lot of times the most leads, but really just a fantastic ROI from your money too. When you're ranking it here, you're not paying for ad spend. So you have a much bigger return on your investment when you get these types of leads. So of course they matter. Everyone guessed it. So of course they matter. And this is just like a live example to kind of give you an idea, because when we track all the marketing, we track everything with very specific tracking numbers. So we'll track, if leads are coming in from the Google listing or from the website organically, Facebook ads, pay-per-click ads, local services ads, any type of digital marketing that's being done will have a separate tracking source. So we know exactly these numbers and what tends to get the most. So we can compare against all of our clients and basically tell exactly how many leads are coming from each source. And the Google business profile, which is what you see in the Google Maps, that's what gets the most leads. When it comes to Google Maps, like I was saying, it's the best ROI. With pay per click, you can you can do get a lot of leads with pay per click, certainly. But in terms of ROI and what I recommend doing, that we always say the Google Maps because you want to get that foundation. You want to get those calls coming in organically before you really just pour all your money into pay per click. I talk to a lot of businesses, and each time I may hear that they're doing Facebook ads or pay per click ads or whatever, and a lot of times I'll go in and say, look at the Google Maps, look at the website to see how you're ranking there. Because if you're not ranking at all, I always recommend fixing that, getting to the bottom of it, so you get those leads before pouring money into pay per click, which can be a lot more money. Not to say they don't work; they're a great idea. Just I always like to have that foundation set. Okay, so here's some of the big changes that we're seeing. So um, the listings and really the ability to show up in the map pack. So just want to make sure we're clear on the map pack. So the map pack, this section here, I'm going to say that a whole bunch of times. It's the same thing as Google Maps, basically. But to show that map pack, you need to be, or sorry, for Google to show the map pack, it usually comes with some kind of location involved in the search, like a deck company in Maryland or deck company in your city, whatever, deck builder. Those are all what's going to trigger that Google Map Pack. And also that Map Pack, since Google loves to make money, they tend to find little sneaky ways to include ads within organic results. So Google actually will show those show an ad in the Google business profile. So you can show up there, which is nice if you're running ads, but it also is at the top. So it kind of brings down the organic listings. Google local services ads, those are a little bit separate. Not something we're going to be talking about, but they are live in most, I think, every market, but they're only specific to fencing. On the decking side, it's kind of combined with general contracting or carpentry. And then the verification process, I would say this is one of the biggest changes. It used to be very easy with like a postcard. You just send a postcard to your address. It has a code on it. You type the code in and you're good. Now it's much more difficult. They make you do a video verification. So you have to kind of stage your office, show them paperwork of your office, and show a video of you basically going through, showing Google what the office looks like, the signage, the paperwork. They want to see that it's actually a legit place. So it's a lot tougher now than it used to be. Hours of operation, this continues to be a pretty big deal. If you're one of those businesses that's open like 8 to 4 online, and you have competitors that are open till say 7 or even later than that, if somebody reaches out to find a deck builder, a fence contractor, and goes to Google to do that, say at like 5 or 6, after your hours, Google will actually rank you lower because they want to show only the open businesses. So what I always recommend to our clients is, extend those hours as much as you can, get an answering service to answer those later calls if you have to, or at the very least, you could just leave a voicemail or set a voicemail up. But of course, having someone answer the phone is going to be your best bet. But try setting those hours later. A lot of times we do that with clients and we get more leads just from that alone because they're open later and people get off work and want to talk. Okay, so commercial tends to be a little bit better than residential, but we have clients that get away with residential as well. It's just much harder to verify. You have to really be sneaky about it and kind of stage it to look like a commercial address. So it's a little bit harder than that, than residential. Okay, so put a 1 in the chat if you consistently Google yourself to see where your business ranks. Type in deck builder near me around town, put a two in the chat if you don't really do it or rarely ever do it and are not consistently checking your rankings. So one if you are checking, two if you aren't. More twos than I thought. Okay. So I wanted to explain this piece here because this is something that comes up pretty often with clients, just people I talk to. So if you if you are searching in a certain part of town, say you're trying to see if you rank for the keyword deck builder near me or fence company near me, if you are, and you can see here, this is fencing company for this example. If you're typing that in one part of town and then you drive to a job in another part of town, say it was 15 miles away or could even be 5 miles, 10 miles, you got to be really careful to make sure you know where you're searching from and how close you are to your office. Because what we've seen is if you have a fence company and you're sitting by, say you're sitting in your office and you type in fence company near me or deck builder near me, you're probably going to show up number one because you're sitting so close to your office or you're within your office. So the whole proximity factor is so big with Google. And if you are ranking close by, or if you're searching close by your office, it's going to be much easier to rank. And, if you're typing in fence company near me when you're 5 miles away, I would say you should be ranking, 5 miles away or more. But if you're sitting there at 20 miles or, more, or even 15 in some cases, if you don't see yourself ranking there, it might be not even possible to do it because of competition. So just say this because I want everyone to be kind of wary of this and know like where, when they're searching, to make sure it's kind of realistic to even be ranking there. And then also to not just assume everything is perfect just because you're ranking, you're searching from your office. Okay. So these are just kind of some of the different search results here. The only one we're missing is the AI overview, which is at the top. But this is your local services ads. You have your Google pay-per-click, your map pack, your SEO. So these are the places you can rank. But Google is pushing more and more towards AI. However, for some of the best searches, the commercial searches, like I keep saying, deck builder in your city, deck builder near me, Google still is emphasizing the map pack much more. So it can show the AI overview, which appears at the top, but it's not very consistent. I think it's about like 17% of the time it shows up there. So the map pack is still what Google is kind of working towards and they still are promoting. So that's why this whole webinar, is something that I really want everyone to focus on, because a lot of people are kind of freaking out about AI, thinking it's already transformed and, ChatGPT is bigger than Google. It's absolutely not the case. We compare and we optimize for AI too. We're already prepared for that. But when we compare all of these different clients, we're still seeing a very, very small amount going to ChatGPT, and still the majority of the leads still are going to Google. Okay, so this is nothing really new, but Google has cracked down on fake Google listings. So this was back in 2015 when they really made a big deal about this. But make sure, if you're having problems with your Google listing or it's getting suspended or something, my best advice would be to do things the way they want. Have an actual office, rent a cheap office space, get it verified, have the signage, do all of that. And you really shouldn't have a problem there. You don't want to use like a PO box or anything like that. So basically what the results that we've been seeing that really, really move the needle quick is a lot of times when we go to look at Google listings, they're just not near their most ideal customers. So, I'll go in there and I'll look at the map and I'll say, all right, if you could just dominate 3 cities or 3 areas, like where would those be? And I'll draw them out on the map, I'll circle them, and then I'll compare that to where your Google listing is. So if your Google listing is, 15 miles or more from your ideal customer, in some case, it could be 10 or, 10. It just depends on the competition. But if you're far away from those areas, it's going to really hurt how many leads you can get. because of how much Google weighs the location specifically. So if you're within 5 miles of your target area, it's going to be much, much easier to rank there. But you want to make sure that office is close to the types of areas that you want specifically. So very important to look at where your office is and decide, do you need to move? Because if you're not anywhere close or you're out in the sticks somewhere, nowhere near your customers, that can be a huge problem. And we've seen it many, many times before. Also, make sure the customers, the homeowners that you're trying to sell to can afford what you have. If you're a luxury deck builder, you want to go in somewhere that has those demographics of people that have more money. You don't want to go in there with a median income of much smaller, 50,000 or something like that. You want to go into where they're 100, 150, 200, something like that, if possible, to really sell those jobs, to have a better chance of selling them. Also, don't spam anything. Make sure your name, address, phone number are consistent on your Google listing, as well as your website and your citations, which I'll talk about. Spamming your city in your company name is usually a no-no. Yeah, but if you rename your business, add the DBA for that city, you can kind of get away with it, but that's a whole other conversation. And then making sure the reviews are good. So if you have a Google listing that's sitting there with, under 10 or under 20 reviews, and your competitors have 50 or 60 or over 100, 200, 300, whatever, it's going to hurt big time, because you basically got to put yourself in their shoes. I'll use the deck example again. If you're trying to spend, say, 50,000 or 100,000 on a new deck, you're going to go to Google. If you don't know of a deck builder, you're going to type in deck builder near me, and then you're going to see what the reviews are. You're going to want to see what people are weighing in on. So rankings aside, if someone had to go through all the Google listings and the rankings didn't exist, those people are going to be more attracted to more reviews, because it's more certain that they're going to do a better job, even if it's not even the case. We all know that there's people that do fake reviews, things like that, but that's kind of what people are thinking. And when we compare our clients that have the most reviews in their market, or ones that are really struggling to get them, usually the revenue follows very closely to how many leads that are there, or how many reviews that are there. Okay, so we'll talk about some different ways to rank in the map pack here. So first things first, well, basically with your Google listing, there's a couple of things that will help a lot. So first, you need to have the company name in there. Read that. You don't want to add any filler words in there unless you add that DBA name. So, if you're ABC Decking, you don't want to just spam it with whatever city you're in. However, you can do that if you add that DBA name with the government, you show the paperwork, you can get away with it that way. You want to make sure that website's added using a local number, not 800 number, using an actual address and showing that address. You want to make sure that address is shown. Upload plenty of photos, consistently do that. It's really important. Talk about your service areas, the hours of operation, your services, and then also add your services as products. So that's more of just kind of a checklist. You want to make sure all this stuff is added to your Google listing. Okay. Since nobody said they don't have a Google listing, I'm just going to skip through these steps here. This is just kind of what it looks like. I wanted to make sure if anybody hadn't, I can kind of show them that. So when you're updating your Google listing, the photos are something that can be kind of overlooked, not consistently doing. So when you get done jobs, you want to make sure you get best case scenario, you have a professional photographer come out and take pictures of the jobs so you can put them on the website in your marketing. You don't want to just have somebody that's just taking it on their phone that doesn't really know, how to take a good picture. So I would recommend getting some nice high quality photos. Even more important, I would say, with like the decking side of it. And then make sure when you do upload those, you do rename them as well. So instead of 123.jpg, rename it to fencing company Baltimore Maryland, something like that. That actually makes sense. Joe asked, is it important to update or refresh photos? So I would just recommend adding them consistently. So, as you go, add new photos as you get them. Don't just like let it sit there. I would consistently add new ones. The Google posts. So Google posts are kind of like a social media post for the Google listing. So you want to do these Google posts really once every 30 days at a minimum, but I would say probably once a week is the best way to do it. So having new posts going out there, showing off what you're doing, the work you're doing, all of that stuff. Responding to reviews. So if you have good or bad reviews, you want to respond to every single one of them. If it's a bad review, you want to make sure you address it and, have a, don't get in an argument match with them on Google. And what you can do, especially with the positive ones, is actually include keywords in the review. So, they say, they talk about their experience. You can say, um, thank you so much for choosing us as your, deck builder or fence company in this city. Talk about the city that it was done, the work was done in. Talk about the services you did for them. All of those are good keyword ads that can help with the rankings. The questions that get posted, the FAQ section, you can answer those as well. A lot of times people don't really add them, but you can add them yourself. That's another thing you can do. Okay, so building citations. So citations are basically just a website that has business directory information in it. So there's thousands of these websites out there that have business information as a repository, basically, or a directory. So it'll show the business name, the address, the phone number. Examples of these could be something as big as like Facebook or Yelp, but there's, like I said, thousands of them out there. There's a lot lesser known sites. So you want to make sure that you're adding that business information to those sites because Google will check to see, they will basically verify your information by checking your Google listing compared to these other websites. So you want to make sure you're doing that. Make sure there's no duplicate Google listings as well, no duplicate information or incorrect business information. So you want to make sure that you look at these citations and get them in order, and then information is matching. Okay, so aggregators. So these are basically citations, but they're basically like a site that other websites get information from. So if somebody were to create one of these citation directory websites, they could contact these aggregators to get the business information. So they'll talk to them to get this information. That's a big deal because if these websites are getting their new information or updated information from these sites, you want to make sure that the aggregators have the correct information. So when these sites get that from them, they're not getting incorrect information. So these aggregators can play a really big part with that. These are just some tools if you are trying to build citations on your own. Moz Local, Bright Local, Whitespark, Yext. These are all ways that you can go in there. Yext is a good one because it's a much faster way to get citations and easier to update. Something like Yext has basically like a partnership with these citation websites, and you can enter the information and it will automatically push all of that information to the citation websites and update it there. And then if something changes, you can update it with Yext as well. So a little bit pricier using that, but it's a good tool. These are just kind of some of the best practices. We talked about this a little bit, but of course, make sure you have your Google listing. You want to get these citations with a tool like Yext or some of these other ones. Get the aggregators set up. Bright Local is another tool for citations where it can help you get industry specific citations. This can be helpful. And then, those tools are pretty good for helping with these citations. With just ranking on Google in general, like if you're competing against somebody that has just a lot of reviews and you're nowhere close, Google's going to rank you lower just because of that fact alone. But as I was saying in the beginning, if you're that really good homeowner that's really looking for just somebody that's going to do the job. They're not going to have all these problems. They're not going to screw up their yard or whatever. It's just in and out and, no real issues. Those people are going to be looking for the people with the best reviews because that's, one of the best ways to, as a first glance, see who's one of the better companies. So if you're sitting there at, the most reviews in your market, very good chance it's going to lead to more revenue just because you will be that company that stands out and kind of have that leg up of everyone else. So Shannon or anybody else that's got a low review count, like you really, really want to take advantage of that, install it into your company culture, which I'll talk about here in a second, but do whatever you can because it will have a direct correlation with revenue if you're that dominant review listing. Okay. I'm going to show you some tools that you can use to drive review requests. So there's all kinds of different ways to do it. You can use a tool. I'm a little bit not a great fan of the tools overall, or at least as the only thing, because people can kind of get reliant on just using the tools and sending it out an email, and you tend to just not get a whole lot, especially with the decking side where you're not going to get as many jobs typically as fencing or some other services. You want to make sure you make every review count and try to get as many as you can. So what I like to do is tell clients to try to get in person, leave us some kind of printed review card can be a good way. But really, the clients that seem to succeed the most have it as kind of a company culture. Somebody that's really got this dialed in, and everybody is on the same page within the company. Everyone knows when to ask for it. How to get more of them, how to apply a little bit of pressure to get that review when you're there with them. So just having that kind of culture, but also you can do incentives. You can say, if you get to a certain number of reviews, you take the team somewhere. I had one client that took their team on a cruise if they hit, I think it was 100 reviews. So those are real ways to, basically some of the best money that you can get, even if you are spending a bit on the trip, because you're going to then have those reviews, which is going to help you get more jobs in that year, but it's going to carry you forward in the future as well. And then hopefully you just continue to get more and more after that 100 too. If you can't get it done on the call, after the job is completed, best way to do it would be to make a call. You can also do this for past customers where you can basically, get your list of jobs you've already done, reach out, try to get a hold of them. You can try to incentivize them if you want to try and get more reviews as well, like gift cards, things like that. But that's a great idea if you're at a low review count. I would 100% reach out to those past customers to try and get it up. I would say kind of the magic starting number would be around 30. I think that's when people start to feel a little bit more warm and fuzzy about you. But, it's really going to depend on the competition. 30 could be very low if you're in a certain market. All right. If you do want to use some review tools, they're better than nothing, but here's just a couple ideas. So you got Bird Eye, Gather Up, Review Buzz, Grade.us, and then Nice Job is probably one of the ones that I see the most used. There's also Bird Eye. I think Podium is another one. So there's a lot of different software out there, but just urge you not to just rely on that solely. We've been talking about the Google listing and ways you can rank there, but I want to talk about how the website plays into the rankings as well, because the website has a huge influence on what you rank for, and having the right website pages will help you rank better for certain keywords. So having the on page, which is basically the pages on your website, is really, really important. The first thing that you want to think about is, do you have pages that match all the keywords that are being searched? So basically, it's common for websites to kind of have like a services page that lists out all the services that you do. Even more common would probably be to say, a page for fencing and a page for decking. What you're really missing out on is a huge opportunity is there are so many other keywords that are being searched on Google that are related to fencing or decking. So it's not like everybody just types in fence company or deck builder to find you. They're going to type in other specific keywords. So On the fencing, it could be the types of fencing, vinyl, wood, chain link, aluminum, picket, styles of fence, commercial fencing, gates. For decks, it could be, composite, wood. There's deck staining or Trex decking, things like that. All of those have different separate searches that can be really significant. So it's not enough to just have a website that talks about just fence and just decks. You want to use these keyword tools, SEMrush, Ahrefs, really Google Ads keyword planner is probably one of the better ones to basically get that volume and see what people are searching in your specific market. Because deck builder might be highly searched in your market, but then you go to another state and deck contractor is the more well-known one. So you want to make sure that's set up properly. HTML header tags, this is kind of getting into the weeds a little bit, more for like a developer, I would say, but make sure the keywords are in all your header tags, meta titles and descriptions are set up. And then service area page that talks about the services and separate pages for each city that you work in, putting the name, the address, and phone number in the footer, and linking to your Google Maps is also a good idea. This is kind of just a recap here. What we've seen work out really well. Of course, you got to claim and optimize it, making sure you're in the right area, making sure your name's set up. I don't think I talked about this, but I want to make sure I emphasize it. So if you're a designated fence company or a designated deck builder, and those are the jobs you want, you just want those types of work, or your outdoor living type services, you're not doing like remodeling or roofing, all these things. It's a very good idea to get specific with your name as well, because if you're set up as ABC Construction and you're trying to just get decks or outdoor living, porches or pergolas, whatever, what you can do is get up very far ahead by having basically your business name changed to include that. So instead of ABC Construction, it could be ABC Decks and Outdoor Living. So when you do that, that'll basically tell Google, Google will rank you higher for those keywords specifically. But just as I was saying before, the people that are looking for a really good deck or fence company, they would love to go towards not only the one with good reviews, but also the one that specializes in that. So if you're trying to, if you're a good customer, you have some money, and you want to have someone that comes in and does a great job, or maybe you want this elaborate outdoor living project, if you go to Google and type in deck builder near me, you're going to be looking at those reviews, but you're also going to be looking at who is the specialist, who is specific to this and can do the best job. And when you rename it to ABC Decks and Outdoor Living, and you want these deck projects, that's going to attract those higher end customers. So a lot of times when we work with clients, we'll go through that if it's a problem and say, what can we rename it to? What can, and by the way, another common concern that people have is, say you don't only want to do decks. That's usually one of the first things I hear. What you can do is say, if you're ABC Construction, you could be ABC Decks and Construction, or ABC Decks and Remodeling, or ABC Decks and Home Solutions. You could also be ABC Decks and Pergolas or patios or porches. You can name it to whatever fits the services you want, but it can just be very confusing. And also not even just digital, but if you think about it, you have your wrapped trucks and you have that truck and it says ABC Construction, and you don't make it clear that you do decks. You're missing out on all that opportunity from those trucks passing by. Same with a billboard, because they don't know what you do. It's actually funny. I was driving with my wife on Sunday, and we're passing by this street that has all these billboards, and they had something automotive, like Premier Automotive. And there's no tagline that said what they do. It just said Premier Automotive and like, we will get the job done right, or something like that. And I was like, how is anybody going to know what you do for cars? Like, it wasn't clear if it was a dealership. It wasn't clear if it was, they install window tints or stereos, or they're in body shop, like literally no clue. And, you'd be amazed at how much more work you can get when you just make it more obvious. As you can see with my business name, I made it as obvious as possible. We do marketing for fencing and decking companies, but because of how often we do rename businesses, we can see these changes in real time, very quickly. And if you're going to make that commitment, which I would recommend you doing, I would recommend changing the name as well, because Google will rank you higher, but they also reward you more for being a specialist. And so does AI. So if you're this generalist that does like roofs and decks and fencing and siding and, kitchens, it's going to be pretty much impossible for you to outrank that specialist that's just decks, because you have to pick one with Google, one category, one primary category, and that primary category gets all the weight. So if you want siding jobs and decking jobs, whatever that category is what you're going to get the most leads from, more than likely. And then Google keeps track of all the content you create to see like what is your specialty and learn what you do best. So if you are kind of more on the generalist side, I can promise you it's going to work out better if you pick that specialty and go all in. You'll be in a much better place than you would if you're really broad. And a lot of times we see more growth. It's easier to scale. You can train just one type of crew, and usually ends up being a lot more profit in that regard too. So make sure that name is good. Make sure you're building those citations. Make sure you have a lot of reviews, and then make sure that website's dialed in. So talked about what it takes, or sorry, some of the latest updates, what can prevent you from ranking, some of our recommendations, some of the best tools, what works the best to automate some of that, the review systems. But again, make sure you have the team on the same page, everybody working towards that. It's going to be some of the best time you can spend. There's so much potential with growing the Google Maps that you really want to make sure that's in the best shape as possible, because said in the beginning, it's most leads generally, and the best leads, best ROI. It is really a good idea. So if there's no more questions, Matilda will probably stay on here for a couple minutes just in case anybody still wants to scan that. But I think that's it for me. We'll have another webinar next month. Hope everyone's having a good week, and we'll be talking soon.